honestly though, is there chat? Think about it, okay? Because I saw the fucking sus leaks. Right? Apparently, Dahlia is a hydro attack speed character. Is there a character who works well with attack speed buffs and benefits a decent amount from hydro being on their team because it allows them to do a specific reaction? Chat, it might be a Yol buff. What element is Dalia? 4-star hydro unit, serves as an attack speed buffer, minimal synergy with Skirk for now. So, let's think about who benefits from attack speed buffs and how they work with hydro in general. So it's pretty much these 7, right? That can benefit from attack speed buffs. How well do they synergize with attack speed to begin with? And like what effectiveness is there on their attack speed increases? With Chloride, I don't think attack speed properly works to increase the E animation time. When I was testing it, it kind of felt a little bit faster, but not as much faster as it should based on the amount of attack speed I was getting. Does Arlecchino even care? She has limited amount of attacks anyways. I'll talk about her, don't worry. But yeah, she can. Giant Max goes from 6 and 3E and 2 to like 7 and 3E and 1 with Mika. Yeah, so like basically the normal attack portion of it is faster, but the E kind of isn't. And because she spends half of her time doing normal attacks and half of her time doing E, speeding up the normal attacks by 10% only actually speeds up her combos by like 5%. So it's effectively as if her E was pseudo hit lag, right? So attack speed, synergy. For Chlorine is pretty mid. For Sethos,
my parents always say
it kind of depends on how the attack speed changes his reaction mapping. Because more attack speed might end up not leading to more reactions. But it also might end up leading to a lot more reactions depending on how much attack speed there is. So, TBD for Sethos. Alright, Arlecchino is kind of interesting. By default, Arlecchino can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 attacks. Before her infusion runs out, on the first rotation at least. Her normal rotations right now do 18 attacks. Or less if you end up having to dodge or getting staggered or whatever. But what you default to is 18 attacks, either with 6 and 3D, or 3 and 5D, because the N4 is a double hit, so you get 18 with that. If you were given attack speed, it wouldn't change the fact that you're capped at 19 attacks. However, if you do 18 attacks, your minimum rotation length is 15.6 seconds. And when you look at the Vape team setups right now for Arlecchino, with the shortest rotation from Hydro units, I ended up missing an auto, so that wasn't very good. Let's see. I'm gonna wait for my stamina real quick. Fucking call this. And as you can see, from the fact that my cooldown is over on Bennett before I swap back to him, even though I'm doing EQ, our rotations are actually longer than the lower limit because of our animation time. The animation time for the setup plus the animation time for 6 and 3 actually leads to rotations that are slightly longer. If you had attack speed, it would actually speed up your rotation length. Unfortunate that Tulpa's annoying to test stuff, so I'll go show it in Overworld instead, where I don't have to necessarily dodge incoming attack. Actually, I can just use Zhongli. Zhongli animation length is similar to Shilon and EN2. Let's just do that. So, I used it at 59. And I use it again at 42, 43, which is 16, 17. It's like 16.5-ish seconds. So even with just a little bit of attack speed, we could get that down to the 15.6 lower limit. But more importantly, when you look at the Hydro units available for Vape Arlecchino, 18-second cooldown, 21-second cooldown, kinda not that good and reliant on C6. In other words, if Dalia has some form of off-field pyro that's enough to enable Arlecchino to do vapes, even if the attack speed is kind of irrelevant, that's kind of enough to make Dalia relevant in Arlecchino teams. Did I say off-field pyro? I meant hydro. Sorry. You know what I meant. The more attack speed, the less relevant N3D is. If you have a good amount of attack speed, you'd probably rather do N5D over N3D, because your attack speed speeds up your attacks, but it doesn't speed up your dash animation. Anyways, the attack speed synergy for Arlecchino is pretty low. But Hydro synergy is pretty high. Her N5 is very slow, so I don't know about that. Well, 6 and 3 is like a similar amount of time as 3 and 5. Alright, if I start hitting at 50, I finish at 41, so it's about 9 seconds. I finish at around 41 again. So it's a very, very similar amount of time. And it's less stamina hungry. It's a bit less damage because the N5 is about as strong as an N3, but the N4s are a lot weaker than the N1 and the N2. Might have forgotten you can skip most of the N5. Yeah, the N5 has pretty long N lag and you can cancel it very easily. Won't beat her melt teams. I mean, it could. It depends on whether attack speed is all you get from it. Also, if it's enough attack speed, you will be able to get your 19th attack, which means that instead of 15.6, your lower limit to cooldown is going to be 14.8, which means you will actually be able to do 15-second rotations instead of 16. That's another second you shave off. Like, right now, in Vape Arlecchino teams... wait. I wonder if they have Candace on GC Sim. They do. Double Hydro. That's a little sus. Okay, this one, yeah. But yeah, if you look at what you get from Candace in this team, right? Her personal damage is 2.5k, and her buff at 27k HP. Oh, how does it scale again? Divided by 1,000 times 0.5%, plus 13 plus 20%. It's 33.5. So if I remove 33.5 High roll percent equal minus 0.335. Run it back. Candace's buffs in this team, plus her personal damage, is the equivalent of about 10k DPS. It is very easy to compete with that. And so even if Dahlia doesn't have the best synergy, as long as Dahlia does something, it's probably going to be usable at least. 10k DPS is pretty decent. I mean, it's not worthless, but it's also not that great. Right? When you think about the fact that that's pretty much all Candace gives you. Candace is not a utility unit. Just give her the instructor buff and you make up half of the lost damage from the damage percent you lost and the personal damage you lost from Candace. So if Dalia is not a unit that has really high burst requirements, already it's probably competitive with Candace. Right? If Dalia has enough off-field hydro to allow Arlecchino to vape, and enough attack speed to let you do at least one more attack, it means that your rotations go from 16 to 15. And just from that one less second of rotation, plus an instructor buff, it's already the same damage as Candace. So if Dalia provides literally anything else, they'd be an upgrade. And Candace, as much as she's pretty good here, is reliant on C6 and honestly kind of annoying to play because of the ER requirements. So, all this to say, it might end up being pretty good for Arlecchino, but we'll have to see more. Anyways, Hydro Synergy for client is kind of low. Like, she's got taser teams, but they're not the best. She's got, like, Quick Bloom teams, but what makes them good is Farina. There's no shot you're gonna want to play that with double Hydro or without Farina. So I really don't expect much with Chloe. Sethos, honestly, kind of a similar thing. Why TBD? Because when it comes to Sethos, so much of his damage comes from triggering Aggravate that getting 10% more attacks does not mean 10% more damage. If that 10% more attacks is like 3 aggravates, 1 non-aggravate, it's actually like a 20% damage buff. But if it's no more aggravate, it's like a 2% damage buff. Basically, it depends too much on how the reaction mapping ends up turning out, and that's too dependent on the exact amount of attacks you get, or of attack speed you get. So it's really hard to say. Anyways. Next is Wriothesley. Wriothesley attack speed synergy is mid, because he's got... His base combos generally already use some charge attacks, and he's got some hit lag. But his Hydro Synergy is mid to high. Right now, his Hydro Synergy isn't the best, but Escoffier is going to change that. Post Escoffier, the Hydro Synergy will be high. The biggest problem is Wriothesley's personal damage is just not really enough. In a team with Escoffier Farina, can Dalia justify being on the last slot instead of Yelan when Yelan's personal DPS in a team like that is going to be like over 30k? I honestly kind of doubt it. Maybe Dalia has like really strong C6, which makes it good enough. Perhaps that's possible. But if it's not that, then I honestly doubt it. Would it make a big difference if the Dalia attack speed also affected charge attack speed animation? The thing is, Wriothesley is a character whose optimal combos include cancels, whether they be dash cancels or jump cancels. And cancels are not sped up by attack speed. Which means, let's say, right, your default charge attack animation is like, or like with end lag, is like, I don't know, 1 point, it's not, I'm gonna go off of fucking made up numbers, but whatever, right? Let's say your default charge attack animation is 0.9 seconds, but you can dash cancel it after like 0.4, and the dash cancel takes like 0.3. These are fake numbers again, but whatever, right? And so if you dash cancel it, it's like 0.7 instead. If you get attack speed and attack speed affects the charge attack, this number goes down, but this one doesn't. So even if it's a massive decreased animation time, it's only going to be barely better than doing a cancel. So it's a lot more impactful to increase the normal attack speed, because those aren't attacks you dash cancel, versus charge attack speed. Alright, next is Wanderer. Wanderer attack speed synergy is really high, but Hydro synergy is really low. Wanderer has no synergy with Hydro. His only pseudo synergy with Hydro is the fact that Furina works well with him, and a second Hydro reduces her ER requirements. But if Dalia is not a healer, you're not using Dalia over Farazan anyways, so it wouldn't matter. But yeah, the buff that Wanderer gets from Hydro is honestly just not that good, because Wanderer doesn't really struggle to fill all the uptime he has, even without a Hydro buff. And so the Hydro buff effectively only means that you get to stay on him and do a 22-second rotation with 2 seconds of unbuffed damage. Ooh. Awful idea, obviously. So the Hydro buff kind of doesn't do anything. And so unless Dahlia's numbers are just insane, it probably won't be good with Wanderer. Ayato, attack speed synergy is a bit higher. I think his hit lag feels like short. I just realized we're speed tuning in Genshin. Actually, you're actually kind of right. For a lot of these characters, their synergy with attack speed buffs is going to be very dependent on breakpoints, so it kind of is similar to speed tuning. Anyways, Hydro synergy for Ayato is honestly pretty bad, because the Hydro Resonance isn't completely worthless, but you should already be playing Furina. And so a third Hydro doesn't really do that much. But it's not completely worthless. It does reduce his and Furina's ER requirements, so I'd say it's like mid. The biggest problem is that Escoffier is very, very powerful. And if you're doing Ayato, Furina, Escoffier, and your last slot you're thinking about Dalia, Dahlia's competing with a fucking 25k DPS Yelan, or a Citlali that increases your Ayato's damage by a pretty good amount, that provides you with a shield, that provides you with Cryo Resonance for Ayato and Escoffier and Furina damage. And honestly, unless Dahlia's numbers are just wildly fucking broken, I just don't see it being all that great. And finally, Yoimiya. Attack speed synergy high, Hydro synergy high. Yoimiya is definitely the biggest winner of a Hydro attack speed buffer, but only if the Hydro attack speed buffer actually applies enough Hydro to vape. By default, if you're doing dash cancels, you end up getting 3 and 5s into 1 and 1 before your Pyro Infusion runs out. With attack speed, that can go up. I don't know exactly what the breakpoints are. My Mika isn't leveled, so the attack speed buff is pretty low. 13%. I think that's enough to get 1 more attack. I don't think it's enough to get 2 more. I'm not sure. We can take a look. Fuck. My shield broke. But I think I got staggered after N2, so it was 1 more attack. So I still had the Power Infusion on the N2, but it was gone by the time I got my N3. Amount of attacks you get if you do RR cancels instead of dash cancels is a little bit higher. So let's show that. My shield isn't big enough. I'm gonna use Lanyan instead of Zhongli. Didn't use Mika? No. I'm trying to show RR cancels without Mika first. Yeah. So I got N2 infused. Even without an attack speed buff. So I got one more infused attack. From doing RR cancels. Fuck. Did my shield expire, or was it just not tanky enough? My Lanyan build might be sus right now. Yeah. So here I got my N4 infused with a level 1 Mika skill, right? I got 2 more attacks from doing RR cancels. That's because the attack speed does not increase the speed of your cancel, so doing faster cancel with RR cancel instead of dash cancel is more impactful with attack speed. The thing with Yoimiya is that getting more attacks won't necessarily mean getting more vapes, and if it doesn't actually... if the additional attacks you're getting aren't reacted, then they're a lot less impactful. Because of that, the actual synergy she has with attack speed can vary a lot depending on how good you are, which cancels you're doing, what you're fighting, if the things you're fighting allow for you to do specific cancels that are better but that leave you more vulnerable, and exactly how much attack speed it is, right? It's always going to be good. The question of how good it is, though, is going to be very breakpoint dependent. I think if you do frame perfect RR cancels, you can get N3 infused without attack speed buffs, and with Yunjin, I think you can get a full N5, maybe even an N1 after that. But I'm not entirely sure. I don't have the attack speed constellation on Yunjin, and I'm not very good at playing Yoimiya and doing RR cancels. Anyways, the biggest problem is that in Yoimiya teams, unlike in Arlecchino teams, Yoimiya tends to have a lower portion of the team DPS. Her teams that are focused solely on her damage tend to be a lot worse than her teams that have personal damage coming from multiple characters, right? If you look at the highest sins for C0 Yoimiya, the number 1 is TF Yoimiya, and I think she's on EM Sans. No, she's not. This is not the EM Sans sim. Okay. No, but wait. 72.7? Was this the one where EM Sans was better? No, it wasn't. Because there's not enough... okay, yeah. But even then, right here, Yoimiya less than half the team DPS. Here, Yoimiya a little bit more than half the team DPS, but fucking half that damage is overload. This is the EM Sans sim. Yeah. And I remember checking this. I think it was yesterday. 72.4. And if you change the goblet from Pyro to EM, 73. It's actually better. Because so much of the damage is overload damage. And when you look at a team that is actually solely focused on Yoimiya talent damage, and that, like, hyper buffs her, this isn't one of those. This is wheelchair, right? You end up having to go kind of far down. Even this one is not really one of those. And the first real one is gonna be, like, this one, I guess. Decent amount lower than the other ones. In a team like this, Yelan is doing 12k DPS, and Yelan is giving you a damage percent buff. And so, for Dalia to be competitive, Dalia would have to increase Yoimiya's damage by like 30 to 40%. That's not something that's going to happen from attack speed alone, unfortunately. That's because the lower your personal damage as a carry, the more characters like Yelan matter for their off-field damage. And so for weaker, older carries like Yoimiya, if you want to give them supports that are focused on increasing their personal damage, they need to do a lot to be competitive with the ones that have personal damage themselves. That being said, a lot of the value from Yelan in a team like this is Yelan's personal damage. And if you have an incredibly good build on Yoimiya, you have her signature, maybe a few cons on her, then that decreases the relative value of Yelan's personal damage in this team. And it makes it easier for a character whose main purpose is to buff Yoimiya's damage to be competitive. All in all, I'd say that when it comes to overall synergy, with Klein and Sethos, it's pretty low. With Arlecchino, honestly, it's pretty good. It's mid to high, I'd say. Because Arlecchino's current vape teams don't have good vape units, don't have good hydro units to use. With Wriothesley, it's unfortunately, I'm expecting pretty low. Wanderer, probably pretty low as well. Ayato, maybe mid. And Yoimiya, mid to high as well. At the end of the day, it's going to depend on whether Dalia actually does have off-field hydro, on the amount that's getting buffed, if Dalia has personal damage. There's a lot of factors we don't know about yet. But just based off the knowledge that Dalia is an attack speed focused support that is a hydro character, this is what I'm expecting.